Let's get this thing finished up. Before we go too far, I ran into a few issues. Let's watch. So I'm just painting all the trim and everything around the windows. Surprisingly, this part that I'm painting right now is not actually part of the roll cage. If you look at any race car, any of them that have a Lexan window, this is actually reinforcement for that window. It's kind of a shame. I would have preferred it to be built into the window, something I could mask off and paint, because it would look a whole lot better. If you remember on the last video, I assembled everything as parts were drying, not in any specific order, at least according to the instruction sheet. I did the exact same thing here, except in the editing process I spliced everything together according to how it's supposed to be built step by step in the instruction sheet. So there will be some continuity errors and you'll see things in the background that aren't done or haven't been installed yet, so sorry if it's confusing. So I got all the trim pieces painted, everything is done. This I'm going to touch up by hand later. We ran into an issue. These decals preferred to stick to the tape more than they stuck to the body under clear. I wasn't really a big fan, so I'm not really heartbroken seeing them leave. More work I gotta do. So I'm just going to sand all that back to smooth and reshoot some clear over it. And this time, however, I was very careful not to put any tape on the decals, and I even went out and bought some super expensive tape. Now, this roll was like 16 bucks. It doesn't stick to anything. It's actually terrible tape, so hopefully it won't pull any decals up with it. Sorry if you hear all that weird creaking noises in the background. We have like 90-mile-an-hour wind gusts in Kansas right now, and I think it's about to suck my garage door off the house. Now, even though I didn't put any tape on the hood, I had the same problem. This problem, however, reared its ugly head whenever I was doing some very light polishing and buffing. The decals literally just slid off the hood. I was talking to some people. Apparently decals don't like to stick to a super shiny surface, and that to me a spray paint has a lot of gloss in it. So I'm gonna go rummaging through my parts bin here for some extra decals. This is what I came up with. A lot of them I pulled from the original decal sheet, like this one. See how it says number 63, even though I built the 64 car? I'm willing to bet that nobody would have noticed that if I hadn't pointed it out, so I'm not too worried about it. So by this point, all the clear I shot over everything to clean it up was dry, and this is how that turned out. And while we're here, this piece needs to also be painted yellow in some parts. And I didn't really like how closed off everything was, so I cut out the vents to make them quote-unquote functional and just look a little bit better. Watching me peel masking tape off is boring, so if you guys don't mind, I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit right here. Bonus points to anyone who can point out the aforementioned continuity error. And that's how this piece looks when it's done correctly. This is why we save parts from other builds instead of just throwing them away, because they can be recycled to make other builds better. don't know about you guys, but I think this looks a whole lot better than the molded in mesh or decal that just looks like mesh. So there are a few different ways to mask off windows. The preferred method, obviously, is for the manufacturers to give us a die-cut template. So I'm going to run to town and buy some more tape and show you how I do it. Now, I only buy the 10mm tape because I could always cut it down to just about any thickness I need. So cut you a strip and start outlining the parts that you want masked off. Now we've all seen the master at work. He'll put down a big piece of tape and then carefully cut around that in just one continuous cut with a very sharp blade. Be honest with you, I drink a lot, so my hands shake, so I'm never going to be that precise or that careful. Really, the only cutting I will do is just on the edges. And with a very, very sharp blade, you guys know I take care of this if you watch my other videos, I will do just a very tiny score. Never deep enough to gouge the glass below, but with that score, I just break it off. So just like that, I will just cut another piece and just outline all the way around where it needs to go. And once the outline is done, I'll just use a bunch of little pieces of tape to fill it all in. This method is almost foolproof. Tape is always cut in a straight line, so use that for your straight line edges. And really, the only danger we're looking at here is just laying the paint on too thick and having it bleed under the tape. So if you watch when I paint at an angle away from the tape line and just kind of let the overspray kind of be the paint. I don't really know how else to explain it. Just paint away from the tape line, you'll be fine. If you follow those steps and take your time, this is what you're going to end up with. And those pens I just pointed at, they're alignment pens. This is the easiest glass I've ever had the pleasure of installing on any kit I've ever built. This little side window, however, it was not as easy. And that's probably my fault for having such big hands and I couldn't get down in there. So enjoy my struggle. You guys hear that? That wind's getting crazy out there. So after about 3 minutes of struggling, I finally got it in there. Now I gotta do it all over again with glue so it matches the other side. Check out these new tweezers. They're all blunt, and I guess they're made specifically for decals. From my understanding, they're all the rage in the Gundam Gunpla world. Bonus points are once again being offered to anyone who could point out the continuity error in this scene. Not really sure why I didn't speed this scene up. No reason this should take 3 minutes. I'll pay more attention next time, guys. I'm sorry. those are the hands of frustration, because I just realized that I can't do really much of anything until that decal dries. So on to the continuity errors. Now these little things, even though they're the same part number, there really is a left and a right. And notice how low the light is sitting on this side. If we flip that over 180 degrees and install it on the other side, it is centered much better. These also slide in, sort of like a dovetail. I've never seen anything like that. I'm really impressed. It's kind of cool. Why they chose to do that here instead of parts that have typical fitment issues boggles the mind. And to simulate the rubber seal that goes around the headlight lenses, there's really no secret here. This method has been used by almost every modeler on the internet. We just use a Sharpie. Now you notice I use kind of the flat meaty part of the Sharpie. I just do that so it doesn't slip off. It's just easier to control that way. So I will do that one side and set it aside for a few minutes for it to dry. Otherwise you're just going to rub it right off with your fingers. Once it's dry, I'll cut it from the sprue, sand the little nubbin thing down, then Sharpie the other side of it. When it's all said and done, you're going to have something that looks like this. I'm using a piece of worn out tape just to make peeling it off easier at the end. But you'll notice that I don't really touch it with my fingers, especially not on the bottom. I'm doing my best to avoid fingerprints, especially on the other side of it, because once this is glued in, the fingerprints are going to be there forever. You won't be able to wipe them off. Just a little bitty tiny dab of UV resin in each of the corners. I'll shine some of the light on it and get that locked in, and this piece is there forever. I'm just doing a little sanity check here just to make sure there's no fingerprints under it, because I did have to touch it to flip it back over. I'd say I got very lucky. Second guessing myself because I don't remember which way's forward on this thing. I'm a real big fan of doing sanity checks on my work, so I'm going to use the grit on this cutting mat just to make sure these are straight. So I'll glue this in as one of the last things I do, right about the time I do the mirrors. We have a lot of handling left to do, and I'm afraid if I make it all permanent now, they're just going to get knocked off and hurt. One of the last things that I always do before I can glue the body down to the chassis is I clean all the fingerprints and everything out from inside of it, because you're not going to get a chance to do it later. And that just fell into place very easy. Maybe too easy. Yeah, we're gonna need to glue this thing in place. A little bitty tiny dab of glue around the edges of the body to lock this thing in place. Now, I think the wheels and tires look better on cars when they're kind of flush with the body and not really tucked up too far up underneath the wheel well. So I'm just going to mess with the adjustment on these to get it exactly where I want them, then I'll just glue them in place. And as I have noted in my previous builds, these aren't toys and I don't play with them, so I don't really care if they're able to roll. So I have no problem gluing a wheel in exactly where I want it to be. And here I'm just using my fingers as kind of a guide, so I know when the wheels are flush with the fenders. And I did that exact same process to the front wheels, I just didn't record it. And as usual, I'm just making sure it's level. All four wheels are touching the ground and there's no wobble to it. And with that, we are done. God damn it, I always forget about these things. It's kind of weird. Mirrors are the most things that I always forget. I will do an entire photo shoot with the car to show it off before I realize that I forgot to install the mirrors. Alright, I just got to do that for the passenger side and then we will be done. I'm not really thrilled with how high the front of the car set. I think it's actually a fender well issue because the car is level. There is just a very unsightly gap between the top of the tire and the bottom of the front fender. Aside from that, this kit was a pleasure and genuinely fun to build. Alright, but we're done. I want to thank you for watching. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.